Hey, it's Josh and welcome to Consume the Canon. So last week we finished Clone Wars. We got everything done with Clone Wars and it is finally finished. I thought it was going to be one of the hardest parts of Consume the Canon. Actually, it turned out to be one of my favorite parts. I love Clone Wars. I would start watching it again right now if it wasn't for the fact that I had all this other stuff I had to read. But finished it all off, and now we've got a big gap of content before we get to another TV series, Rebels. So it's all about novels and comics and a bunch of other stuff. So let's start getting through that stuff right now. So immediately after the finish of the unfinished season, there is a short story that was in a Star Wars Insider magazine called Kindred Spirits. The focus of Kindred Spirits is about Asajj Ventress and the Pirate Queen Rame and Hondo Ohnaka all interacting with each other. It's a prelude to Dark Disciple, and it's really just kind of a fun, quick little interlude. It doesn't really give us that much as far as setup for Dark Disciple. It just happens just right before it. The Pirate Queen actually gets mentioned in Dark Disciple, but isn't really a fundamental character. Hondo doesn't show up at all. But it gives us just a little bit of setup to show us that, yes, Asajj Ventress is still a bounty hunter, and this is kind of where she is in her bounty hunting life. And it does hint at the idea that Asajj may be getting a little bit good. Maybe not great, but she's at least starting to think about things that are a bit more moral than just being an amoral bounty hunter. It's only a couple of pages. If you can get your hands on it, it's really fun. And it's really great to read right before the novel Dark Disciple. So the first novel of Consume the Canon, because at this point, Master and Apprentice and Queen Shadow haven't come out yet, is Dark Disciple. Dark Disciple is an entire story about Asajj Ventress and how the Jedi Order needs to get Asajj's help to try and assassinate Count Dooku. They've decided that's the only way that they can end the war, is by assassination of Count Dooku. So they're going to try and reach out to Asajj to help them with it, because they know she has no love lost for him, and she tried to assassinate him a couple times and failed. The Jedi that they connect with to try and work with Asajj is Quinlan Vos. Now, we don't really know Quinlan Vos that well in the canon. He was in one arc of Clone Wars, but otherwise he hasn't been in the canon that much. But the entire book is about Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress working together to figure out how they're going to assassinate Dooku. There are a ton of twists and turns in this novel. I don't want to really spoil that much for it. Suffice it to say that it's great, especially if you love Clone Wars and you know it well, and you love Asajj Ventress, which I do. Dark Disciple is fantastic. I literally cried the last 10 pages. Constant tears the last 10 pages. I will say, though, if you don't know Clone Wars that well, you might have a hard time kind of keeping up with it. This feels very much like a Clone Wars thing. It was actually an arc of episodes that was going to be that they took from the unfinished season that they never completed, but they wrote the episodes for, and they turned it into a novel. So if you haven't seen Clone Wars and you're not familiar with these characters, it might be a little difficult to really connect with. But if you know Clone Wars and you know these characters, Dark Disciple is an absolutely gripping story about the attempt that Asajj Ventress has to try and build herself back up to being a good person. And, the eventual result, which is not exactly what she was hoping for. It's fantastic. I would recommend it for any Clone Wars fans. After that is another set of Clone Wars episodes that got converted into a different type of media. This is Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, the comic series, which tells in more depth the steps that Darth Maul is taking to try and thwart the Emperor. The series itself dives deeper into the group that he's trying to create, how he's working with Death Watch and the Mandalorians to try and take over Mandalore, and eventually he ends up having to go face to face with the Separatist army and Grievous and Dooku, and he fails. Darth Maul fails. Like every other time Darth Maul tries to do something, he fails. And it's becoming a pattern. Darth Maul, I think, is someone that people, Star Wars fans across the world, love. But if you actually look him from a character and story perspective, he's got nothing going for him at this point. He is so focused on the idea of killing Jedi and destroying the Emperor that he doesn't really think his plans through, and every one of them cannot go up against someone who is as thoroughly prepared as the Emperor is. This is actually the last time that we're going to see Maul for a while. We actually don't see Maul again until Han Solo block, specifically the Solo A Star Wars Story film. So we don't really know what happens to him after this, but at the end of this series, he just disappears. And no one knows where he went. And we don't hear from him again until we find out that he is the head of Crimson Dawn. After Son of Dathomir, there is a 5-issue block from the Kanan comic series. Now, this is not the first 5 episodes, or the first 5 issues. It's actually issue 7 through 11. 7 through 11. And this is the issues called First Blood, the story called First Blood. And really what this set of issues is about is Kanan becoming a Padawan. It's Kanan going from being a youngling to becoming a Padawan, the relationship that he has with his Jedi Master, his burgeoning relationship with clone troopers, and the first couple of battles that he fights as a Jedi Padawan. We start to see the Caleb Doom Kanan character start to come out in these issues of comics. Caleb Doom at the time is very headstrong. He is fearless. He eventually becomes fearless. He has some issues in the beginning, but eventually he realizes, I'm a Jedi. I should be able to go out and battle. And he wants to go to the front line so he can prove himself. And it's a great setup for the Kanan issues that are to follow, where we actually see the fall of the Jedi, and we'll talk about that series next time, which is called The Last Padawan. But right now, this 5-issue arc, really sets up that story. This series, the entire Kanan series, but these 5 issues in particular, are phenomenal. If you are a comic fan, stop watching this right now, pause it, go to your local comic book store, and pick up these issues. They're great. They're already in trade paperbacks. I highly, highly recommend them. Fantastic storytelling, amazing artwork, and very canon-rich. You know, this is important stuff. It's all about Order 66 and how the clone troopers, were loved Jedi and what happened right before Order 66 for Jedis that we haven't seen in some of the films. It's a fantastic series. I definitely recommend you go pick it up. And that Kanan series, First Blood, leads directly into Revenge of the Sith. So Revenge of the Sith, the third of the prequel trilogy, the third film in the prequel trilogy. And like the other films, we have a few youth reader books that go along with it. There is a golden book and a read-along storybook. And again, like we've seen before, the read-along storybook is fine, but the golden book tells the best and most concise version of the story. So if you have young readers who you want to introduce to Revenge of the Sith, I definitely recommend the golden book. I would not recommend the film, though, because it is super violent. There is a lot of horrible, horrible stuff that happens in this movie. It is also the best of the prequel trilogy. However, I still wouldn't really consider it a very good film. It has issues, like all the other ones do, but it is the most entertaining of the 3. However, like I said, there is some serious adult situations in this. Lots and lots of violence. And it serves as a great cap on the journey that we've been going on with Anakin for the entirety of Clone Wars, and even past that, when it was, like the Obi-Wan and Anakin series. We've seen Anakin develop into this character who is so torn between his power and being good. And Revenge of the Sith really does do a great job of capping that. It feels earned. It feels earned when Anakin turns to the dark side to save Padme. And he immediately is trapped by Palpatine and he can't get out. And still, seeing Anakin fighting Obi-Wan and screaming at him that he hates him is stirring. It is powerful. It's emotional stuff. And of course, Anakin turning into Darth Vader and the birth of Luke and Leia. There's so many amazing things that happen. I'm actually getting chills just thinking about it. I just did right there. There's so many amazing things that happen in this film. It's a great cap to the Clone Wars saga in general. And if you haven't watched it in a while, go on out and watch it again. It's I guarantee it's better than you remember. So I think the last thing that we're going to cover this week is actually 2 more episodes from the Kanan series, and that is Last Padawan. Issue 1, which is Fight, and issue 2, which is Flight. So these issues actually bookend the very end of Revenge of the Sith. The first issue tells the story of Kanan and his master with a bunch of clone troopers, and they're all in a planetary battle. And the issue leads all the way up to the delivery of Order 66. So it actually, the last panel is basically the clone troopers turning to fire on the Jedi. The second issue is right after the Order 66. Caleb's master gets killed, and Caleb has to get away, run, and find a way so that he can move on and survive. And we see some of the things that have been hinted at in Rebels, where we see, Caleb Doom trying to figure out how to live on his own. He has lived in the Jedi Temple his entire life. He doesn't know how to survive on his own. But at the same time, he can't use any of the powers that he would normally use to be able to survive, because now Jedi are wanted. They're wanted criminals across the galaxy. So he has to not only survive in a way that he's never been able to do by himself, but he can't use any of the abilities that he's been taught. It is, again, a wonderful few episodes. And we see the rest of Last Padawan later on, after the beginning of the Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith series, which we'll be reviewing next week. But these issues, the later issues of Last Padawan, the entire Kanan run is spectacular. And I love the very intimate version of Order 66 that we see here. Being able to see the book ending in the 2 issues is really great, and seeing it from the perspective of a young Padawan who, is probably 12, 11 in the issues, makes it just that much more impactful. Plus, we also see the beginning of Kanan and the history that we've heard from him in Rebels, where he basically lived on his own and he lived on the streets and he did whatever he could to survive. Now, he hasn't met Hera yet, but we'll see that in some later content. But overall, Kanan, fantastic, and it leads us right into what we'll start seeing with Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. But that is not for today. That is for next time. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Please like and share and subscribe. Tell your friends. And join us next time when it's all Darth Vader all the time on Consume the Canon.